Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak.
Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
And it's about standards and public life. No, I'll tell you what's hypocrisy, Narendra.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin.
We believe in the UK.
No bias, no censorship.
It just doesn't make sense to me. He wasn't doing his job as Chancellor.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Good afternoon and welcome. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's former Labour MP Stephen Pound and also political commentator Albi Amankona. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you. Good afternoon. It's 1 minute past 4. I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. The Met Police say the murders of 2 teenagers in south-east London are linked. The 16-year-old boys, Kian Solanki and Charlie Bortolo, were both stabbed to death yesterday afternoon, around a mile apart in Greenwich. Police were granted additional search powers to determine whether the murders were related. Holding a press conference, the Met's South East Deputy Commander appealed for information.
On Saturday evening, at around 5:10, police were called to reports of 2 people injured in 2 locations. The locations are approximately 1 mile apart. Emergency services attended immediately, and at each location they found a 16-year-old boy suffering stab injuries. Tragically, both boys died of their injuries.
The government says the online safety bill will be updated next month to criminalise the encouragement of self-harm. It says the changes have been influenced by Molly Russell, the 14-year-old who ended her life in 2017 after viewing content linked to suicide and self-harm. The new bill would target online material that manipulates the vulnerable, making it illegal. Alice Hendy is the founder of a suicide prevention charity. She lost her brother to suicide and says the bill should have come out sooner.
The online safety bill itself has taken far too long to come out. I mean, we've seen countless delays, countless revisions. It's seen revisions now under 3 prime ministers. This is an urgent bill, and the longer we leave it, the more lives, unfortunately, are going to be destroyed, and the more families out there are going to feel like mine.
Greater Manchester Police say a man whose body was found covered in potentially hazardous substances was sprayed with acid. 38-year-old Liam Smith's body was found in this street in the Kilburn Drive area of Wigan on Thursday. He'd also been shot. The area is still cordoned off and residents who are feeling unwell are being urged to contact authorities. A murder investigation is ongoing. Protests against COVID lockdown measures are continuing in China after 10 people died in a tower block fire in Urumqi. Demonstrators claim coronavirus measures, which have seen residents locked down for as long as 100 days, may have impeded their escape. Civil unrest has now spread to Shanghai and Beijing at a level unseen since President Xi Jinping took office, with chants calling for him to resign. The Met Police has said it's fully prepared for potential activist disruption in London ahead of Christmas. The force believes Just Stop Oil protesters are planning activity in the capital from tomorrow until the 14th of December. It said it has policing measures in place to respond to disruption. The climate group has been using civil resistance as part of its campaign to stop future gas and oil projects, including holding up the M25. The Prince and Princess of Wales have paid tribute to rugby union great Doddy Weir, who died yesterday, aged 52. In a tweet, the royal couple called the former Scotland international and British and Irish Lion a hero and an inspiration. Doddy, who had suffered from motor neuron disease since 2016, used his profile to raise awareness of the condition and generate funds through his charity foundation. There is currently no cure for MND. The Queen Consort is to break with the time-old tradition of having ladies-in-waiting, opting for Queen's companions instead. Buckingham Palace has announced the names of the 6 women who'll support Camilla in her official duties, in addition to her private and deputy private secretaries. It's believed the companions' work will be similar, but not as extensive as the late Queen's ladies-in-waiting. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens, of course. Now, though, back to Nana.
Good afternoon. It is fast approaching 6 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. It's turning into a bit of a strike fest, which, as we all know, will end up being completely counterproductive. Everybody's doing it. We've got rail strikes, which are dragging on, tube strikes, postal strikes with 115,000 workers downing tools. We've had barristers, dockers, all in the last few months or so. And this week, we also saw 70,000 people in the University and College Lecturers Union walk out. So it'll probably come as no surprise that for the first time ever, the Royal College of Nursing is announcing strike days and more than 300,000 nurses will stop working. The Royal College of Midwives is also consulting its members, as are the junior doctors in the British Medical Association. It's turning into the hokey-cokey. Others voting for potential strike action include 400,000 NHS workers in unison. We'll find out in January whether they're going to go on with it. And their General Secretary, Christina McAnea, said, "Coordinated action unites us and we have a single goal: end this pay crisis in this country." So basically, if they all strike and people start dying, the government, which is us, will have to do something about it. But there's more. There's 400,000 teachers and support staff. Their unions are holding strike ballots. The Scottish Teachers' Union is already taking action. 100,000 civil servants in the Public and Commercial Services Union have voted heavily for industrial action, despite the fact that we are in a mess for paying for a lot of them who sat down as they got a wage during the pandemic. And there are also disputes involving airline ground staff in the GMB, some dock workers, London bus drivers, BT and outreach staff. It's just a long list of people who want more money to combat inflation. At this rate, nobody will be at work. This is getting ridiculous. There'll be no one working to pay for all of this. We need business and industry to move, to pay for this. And if the world stands still, nothing will happen. Put it this way. The last time there was a general strike, because this is where we're heading, it didn't pan out well. In 1926, the general strike there, where over 1.7 million people went on strike, Conservative Stanley Baldwin, who was in charge, he was well prepared. Within 9 days, the strike was called off. Now, you could blame this on disastrous Tory rule, because it's been pretty bad. But would the Labour Party fare much better? It's difficult to fathom how they can do any worse. But just this week, in Prime Minister's Questions, Rishi Sunak demanded Labour get its union paymasters to call off the waves of strikes and save Christmas for millions of families. Frankly, I'm losing sympathy for these strikers. This will cost the economy hundreds of millions of pounds, and we're already in a recession. People are cancelling shopping trips, parties are being axed, along with festive trips to pantomimes and shows, all under threat. Look, I agree, people have the right to strike, but in the end, if you follow it through to its natural conclusion, the country will be bankrupt and nobody will win. So before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, following a suspected diphtheria outbreak, should health screenings for migrants be mandatory? The Home Office has come under fire after reports that dozens of migrants who are suspected to be suffering from diphtheria were moved from a processing centre in Kent to other parts of the country. And health officials have blamed a lack of testing for the failures, and they've dubbed their transfers reckless. So should screening be mandatory? Then at 4:50, it's Worldview. Donald Trump has a pre-Thanksgiving dinner with controversial rapper Kanye West and Nick Fuentes. This all comes after he was reinstated on Twitter, as well as announcing his presidential bid. I'll be getting the latest stateside report, Adridge. Then at 5, it's this week's Outside. Now, our celebrity guest this week is a football legend. He played for Southampton his entire professional career in the 90s. He was also well known to be a creative, attacking midfielder, known for his ability to score superb goals. Any clues? Keep guessing. Stay tuned, he'll be live in the studio. That's all on the way. Stay with me. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Right, let's get started. Let's welcome to my panel former Labour MP Stephen Pound, and also political commentator Albi Amankona. Thank you both for coming in. Nice to see you. Yeah. And Stephen, nice to see you on the panel.
It's lovely to see you. If I may say, you're looking dazzling.
Oh, thank you. Your eyes match your tie. Ties.
Well, I can't change my eyes.
So Stephen, first of all, I'm going to come to you because you're ex-Labour MP.
Yeah.
Look.
Past it is the word.
Yeah, okay. But the Labour Party is sort of in hock with these trade unions. Is it still the way? Because, Keir Starmer was slightly non-committal and did, he did stop somebody. He did sort of sack somebody for breaking his authority. So what do you think? What's your
Look, the Labour Party isn't in the pocket of the trade unions. I rather wish the trade unions would give us more money.
Any more?
Yeah. Well, the trade union movement formed the Labour Party, but that was 122 years ago. And we get about between 60 and 65% of the income from unions, from a small number of unions. But a lot of unions...
But that's a lot, isn't it? That's a lot of money.
It is a lot, but, if you're going to talk about union paymasters,
But he's right in saying that, right? Because it's 65%.
Yeah. No, and that's a decreasing figure. We've got things like the RM groups, unions like the RMT. The RMT don't only not give any money to Labour, they actually stand candidates against Labour. But what really annoys me about this is all the people who we're talking about are the people who are in well-paid, well-protected jobs, and certainly better paid than most people. The single people like my son who's an electrician, the people who work in the small firms, the people who work in Boohoo, they work in the warehouse factories, they don't have unions because they can't be unionised. And what's going to happen here is, again, that the people like the tube train drivers who, they're earning a fair wage.
They're on a good wage, yeah.
They can speed ahead through the green light there. But there's going to be an awful lot of people who travel on those tubes who are not in unionised workforces. And I think it's a real problem there. But you've actually put your finger on something which is possibly going to change the political weather. The Tories are in a mess, no question at all about that. Yeah, there's one thing that they could one card they could play. You talked about Stanley Baldwin in 1926, I remember it well. And after the general strike...
You couldn't have been alive then. You'd be like 100. You think you'd be 100, just under 100.
After the general strike in 1926...
You're aging well, Stephen, I must say.
You know how many years... You see the picture in the attic. 1926, following that, you had 19 years of the Conservatives. 1979, we had the nearest thing to a general strike. After that, we had 18 years of the Conservatives. The fact remains is if Rishi Sunak, and I think he hasn't got many cards to play, but he's got the Jeremy Corbyn card, which frankly is yesterday's news, and he's got the in the pockets of of your paymasters card, and he will try that and he will bang away at that. And the trouble is, the more people go out on strike, the more the public's patience is tired. You said that the hokey cokey. I don't think it's in out. I think it's out.
Well, that's what I mean. It's all about another one. Who's next? Who's in? It's just getting ridiculous. I mean, surely, I sympathise with the nurses and people like that, of course. But surely we can all see that if everybody goes on strike, there'll be nobody to pay tax into this to give you your pay rise. So
well, Albie's an economist. He can tell you about wage inflation and price inflation.
Well, Albie,
Well, I think we've got to look at what is causing these strikes to go on. And actually, one of the things that we've seen in this country since the 2008 financial crash is real wage stagnation in the British economy. Couple that with inflation, which is over 11%, as recently reported this year, and people have had a real terms pay cut. So that's why these people are going on strike. And that's why it's so important for the government to get a handle of inflation. Now, I think there's an expectation that inflation will come down next year, and I'm sure Rishi Sunak will be very much hoping for that. But ultimately, the government's in a pickle because the unions and people working in the public sector want to have higher pay, but the government is saying that it's unaffordable.
Well, they're asking
so it seems to be
15% or something. I mean, that's almost
19%.
It's gone up to 19 now.
19%, but then, of course, the barristers, I think, got a 15% pay rise. So it's a really tricky situation that the government are in, and it's not very clear to me how exactly they're going to get out of it.
Well, put it this way, right? So if people get this pay rise, 19%, then inflation comes down. These people will be ridiculously well paid. I mean, I just think we need to have a reality check here. In the real world, as much as I'd love to give, everyone should have these pay rises, in the real world, the economy will collapse. So I can see that, you can see that, you can see that. So I think if they're going to strike, we need to be a bit sort of more measured about it. All right, the nurses should strike, wait a bit, teachers strike, I get it, but, we have to think outside the box and be realistic.
But if you're simply talking about wages, if you're talking about wages, suppose, if everybody had a £100 an hour pay rise tomorrow, that would be worthless within about 2 or 3 weeks.
Exactly, that's the other thing.
Because it'd be, the classic definition of inflation, it's too much money chasing too few goods. So it simply wouldn't work. I think what these strikes are about, and you talked about nuance, it's not just about money, it's all about the working conditions. And I'd like to see that extended to people who aren't necessarily in strong unions, because we do need to have stronger industrial relations rules in this country. But the problem the Labour Party has is, on the one hand, we're being told that we've got to actually get involved in this. On the other hand, the Labour Party cannot be seen to be the party of a group within society. We have to be seen as the party of the whole of society. And I appreciate that the Tories, the ministers, should be talking much more to the unions. But to say that the Labour Party should be getting involved and actually, maybe, turning up on the picket lines, actually isn't the right way to do it, because it's actually putting down all those people who aren't on strike, who aren't in unions. You talked about the figures for the RCM. I very, very much doubt whether the entire of their membership...
Well, they might do.
Well, you listened to Pat yesterday, and she was talking about that. She said that it'll be a very high turnout. I very much doubt it will. I worked in the health service for years, and I was a branch secretary of my union there. And even in 78, 79, when we were on strike, we made absolutely damn sure that there were theatre staff on duty. We made absolutely sure that the oxygen, the mortuary and the meals were actually being catered for. I think nurses will do that.
I think one of the things that I find the most frustrating about Labour's position is that you heard Lisa Nandy earlier on the BBC Laura Kuenssberg show talking about how the strikes wouldn't be happening if Labour were in power. But they don't have any plan as to how they wouldn't be happening. And even when they're pushed on, well, how would you pay for it if you were going to pay them more money so this wouldn't be happening, there's no actual plan as to how that will happen. So I think it's perfectly reasonable for people to say, what would Labour's plan be if they were in power to stop these strikes from going on? It's not exactly clear yet.
And also, if they want more money, we need growth. So if the economy comes to a halt, then it just really compounds inflation. So we're in a bit of a bind. And I think, I'm not sure how we're going to get out of it, but it can't be to satisfy all these people with their pay rises, because it will just foster even more inflation, and their money will be worthless. So
there's a knockback already. I don't know if you read the statements today from Queen Mary College. I mean, they're saying that they're going to dock 100% of the wages from their lecturers on strike.
I like that. I heard.
I thought you might.
Yeah, I think that's it. They said because you can't. I was thinking that actually, you can have the right to strike, but you don't have the right to all your pay. If you're going to go on strike, that's absolutely your right to withdraw your labour. But then the person employing you has the right to withdraw the income that they're paying you. And then it's down to the unions to then try and support you. And I heard that the other day, and I thought that on the radio today, actually. I thought that was a good idea. That is the way to do it, isn't it?
But just in terms of the strikers, I've got a cousin who is a postman who's been going out on strike, and it's never an easy decision for someone who is one of the main breadwinners in a family to go out on strike because they feel that they need more pay because they're not earning enough money in their job to sustain their own family. Now, I disagree with him on that issue, but it is never an easy decision for people to make to go out on strike, and they are doing it because they believe it's the best thing for themselves and for their families.
Well, it's difficult because I actually agree they should be paid more money, in particular the nurses. But I don't know, it's difficult to know how to go about it. If everyone strikes, then it doesn't make any difference.
No, the way to give everybody more money is to bring inflation down.
Oh, no, I think
then everybody, the pound in your pocket and my pocket is worth more.
Well, also,
everybody, not just those in the strong unions.
What you need there is growth in the economy. And if everybody stands to a halt, then unfortunately,
sure, that's
we don't go anywhere. So
that's
the problem. So these people doing this, the outcome it's not going to be a good one. Even if you get more money, we'll carry on with inflation, so it'll mean nothing. Well, we've solved it. We've solved it. If you just joined us, welcome. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, following a suspected diphtheria outbreak, should health screenings for migrants be mandatory? According to reports, dozens of migrants who are suspected of suffering from diphtheria were moved from processing centres in Kent to different hotels across the UK. The Home Office has faced backlash after failing to test migrants before transferring. So what do you think? Should asylum seekers be screened upon arrival? As ever, GBViews at gbnews.uk or tweet me at GBNews. I've got a poll up asking you that very question. Cast your vote, but first, it's the weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking wet in the southeast with some showers across western parts. Let's take a look at the details. Southwestern England will see a mix of clear spells and scattered showers this evening. The showers will be mainly across Devon and Cornwall and could be locally heavy. Skies across the southeast of England will remain cloudy and we can expect some further rain at times, especially for Kent and Sussex. Wales will see a showery end to Sunday, with winds also remaining brisk along the west coast. Eastern areas, though, will see some lengthy dry spells. Sunday, however, will end on a dry note across the Midlands, with the clearest skies across the north and west. A few mist and fog patches may also form as the evening goes on. Northeastern England will also be largely dry, but further west there will be some showers, some of which may be heavy. It will be breezy along Irish Sea coast, but lighter winds elsewhere. Showers will be quite widespread across Scotland this evening, with the showers heavy in places. The far northeast, though, may avoid most of the showers and stay largely dry. Northern Ireland, though, won't be so lucky, with scattered showers continuing here throughout the evening. Winds will be brisk, especially along the coast and over the hills. Overnight, we'll see further showers in the west of the UK, but drier further east with some mist and fog patches forming. And that's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak.
Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
And it's about standards and public life. No, I'll tell you what's hypocrisy, Narinda.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin.
We believe in the UK.
No bias, no censorship.
It just doesn't make sense to me. He wasn't doing his job as Chancellor.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Good afternoon. It's fast approaching 24 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, before the break, we were discussing general strikes. Let's take a look at what you've been saying. Colin says, hi, Nana. As usual, the people who work for small businesses who cannot strike will be paying for these extortionate pay rises. Exactly. You see, we're not all in the same boat. Clive says, dear Nana, teachers strike in Scotland. What's that got to do with us? SNP are in charge of Scotland. Yeah, and Sturgeon should sort out her own mess. Oh, she's got a lot to do. No, listen, no, what I was saying is a lot of people are going on strike. It's basically everywhere. But Scotland is part of the United Kingdom as well. Come on, be generous. Jill says, do these workers on strike realise if they get a pay rise, job losses will soon follow to pay for the extra funds? Surely that's counterproductive, as working hours will increase on the workers who are left. Well, that's exactly what happened, especially with the miners' strike as well in the last big strike. Well, keep your thoughts coming. But on today's on the Great British Debate today, can people stop changing that on the script? Who did that? In the Great British Debate, I'm asking, following the suspected diphtheria outbreak, should health screenings for migrants be mandatory? The Home Office has come under fire this week after it is believed that migrants suspected of contradicting. Somebody write that? That's contradicting. No, it says contradicting in there. Who's writing this? So migrants suspected of contracting diphtheria definitely have been spread across numerous towns and cities across the country. This comes after the death of a 19-year-old man who'd been held in the Manston Processing Centre. The Home Office said that the death may have been caused by diphtheria, but the official cause hasn't actually been revealed yet. They're going to carry out a post-mortem. More concerningly, though, it's reported that the number of cases has risen to 70, and other officials fear that screening arrangements have broken down. So migrants may have been moved across the country without any record whether they have been screened or whether they're receiving treatment for the high-risk disease. And it's raised questions about the risk it could pose to the wider community and where the blame lies. Now, just to tell you a little bit about diphtheria, it is highly contagious. It's an infection that affects the nose and the throat and occasionally the skin. The infection spreads through coughs, sneezes and sharing items. The serious illness can be fatal if not treated properly, especially amongst children. And since 2019, the World Health Organization has reported an increase in cases from the infection, most notably in Africa, India, Indonesia and South America. We'll be on that list soon. Despite the rise... I'm joking, that's me just saying that. I'm ad-libbing. It's not on this slidey. Despite the rise in the infection in recent years in the UK, the infections are rare, and there's routine vaccinating of babies and children, and it has been going on since 1940. So I'm asking you for the Great British Debate this hour, following the suspected diphtheria outbreak, should health screenings for migrants be mandatory? Well, I'm joined now by former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie. Kelvin, thank you so much for joining us. He'll be here in a minute. Ah, there you go. Kelvin, did you see this as yet another failure of the Home Office and the associated officials in making sure migrants are screened properly?
I do think there's been a massive error here. I mean, after all, I think we had 4,000 in at Manston, and then suddenly once the political storm broke over Manston, that then came down to virtually nobody in there at all. So they all went all over the country. Now, they knew that diphtheria was an issue because diphtheria among migrants in Europe has been on the up. And in fact, the cabinet minister said today that admitted that one migrant had died of diphtheria, but also said that they thought that the numbers would grow by the time they started checking everybody on Monday. So it could be, the number in the Sunday Times says 70, but I think the number that currently is being thought about is 50. Now, this is quite a lot of people. And the other issue is, why wouldn't you test them? After all, we give them food and give them other forms of succor. It's in our interest to find out that if these people are coming to our country and there's something wrong with them, we need to find it out. We don't want to spread it in our community. And so why on earth they would have then simply dispersed everybody without checking? I mean, the last time we saw that in this country was called COVID, when we sent all the old dears back to old folks' homes, and look how that turned out. They were literally, potentially, and with the inquest still really to take place in public, thousands dead. So look, diphtheria is not COVID. I totally agree. But the number that you didn't put up on your bullet point there was that 5 to 10%, by and large, are killed by diphtheria. Now, if for instance we had 70 or 80, and therefore there are eight people dead from diphtheria in our country, I would think that there would be a minor health alarm, not a major one, but definitely a minor one. And this would be really, I do believe, be laid at our door. Now, it's absolutely shocking. I know how most people watching your show right now will be thinking to themselves, that's all we need. Not only do these people come to our country when we don't want them, they come to our country with a disease which can spread. And look, it may not kill any of our people. Let's hope it doesn't. And by and large, let's hope it doesn't kill any of the migrants either. But this is another reason why, honestly, we could honestly do without this. I mean, we have a National Health Service, by the way, which can't even cope basically now. If you've got the flu, they put their hand out and say, we want another, 500 million quid in order to defeat flu. So how would they deal with a mass diphtheria outbreak? Look, I do accept that if you're, I think, up to 6 years old, you get the injection anyway. So the chances are very small. But it's another political failure in relation to migration. And I honestly cannot understand this government's lack of thought process to say, we must get hold of this issue, no matter what the pain is, what the politics is. We didn't mind when we had COVID. We said we don't care what the cost is. We don't care what we do about it. We're going to have a phenomenal investment to try and stop it. But we don't seem to approach this migration in exactly the same way.
Well, I don't know why.
Frankly, I don't know why.
Well, Kevin, stay right there. I'm also joined by Dr. Andrew Valence-Owen. He's a former medical director and chief medical officer for the Bupa Group. So, right, well, let's start with it. I mean, what are the symptoms of this infection? Is it just like a cold? Does it start off quite mildly?
It does, like so many of these things, COVID and other things too. Sore throat, fever, but a very nasty cough, a croup, and you can get a nasty sort of thing growing in the back of your throat, which can sort of block your breathing. So that's very nasty. So that's how it starts, but it can, as you've just heard, get much more serious and affect the heart and the kidneys, and 5 to 10% of people may die with it. So it can be very serious and has to be treated seriously.
Now, in your view, do you support compulsory vaccines and treatment to deal with this issue? Because I know my son's had them. I think they're compulsory for everybody here in this country. Do you support the notion that they should be compulsory?
Oh, certainly. One of the reasons why it's very unlikely, as Kelvin's just said, that people in this country, citizens of this country, will be affected by it is because the vast majority are vaccinated at 8 weeks, 12 weeks and 16 weeks in this country. So the danger is more to the immigrant population.
So you'd say that so there's not really much of a risk to us in this country initially, but can't you end up with something that sort of slightly mutates and becomes vaccine resistant, and then you end up having to deal with the next thing, a bit like the way the COVID sort of has moved on and started to change. Once you get lots of it in
bacteria, it doesn't mutate like viruses do. Okay. So it's and we've had it we've been on the case for years and years and years. But just coming back to the point, I do think that people who are looking after these immigrants and who have contact with them should at least be offered the booster vaccine, and that is being suggested because they could possibly pick it up. So that is the only place where I think British people, if you like, might be affected. But certainly, and I do agree with Kelvin here, I think there should be compulsory screening of people coming into this country in this way so that we know what we're dealing with. It should be recorded. And if they are being sent to other centres, the people where they arrive at those centres should know what they're dealing with.
But then we have but then this is the body autonomy sort of argument then, that, because then you've got all what happened with COVID, people saying body autonomy, we should be able to choose whatever we do. Do you think that argument will hold as well, though, because they've come to this country? Should that almost be a condition of entry, so then we are heading towards mandatory vaccination territory?
Well, I was talking about screening, of course, which is a slightly different thing. It's an investigation, and I think it's perfectly reasonable if there's a problem, just as when COVID was on, many countries were checking before people came into the country that they were negative. And I do think screening is something which public health people have the right to do, I think, to ensure, to know what's going on and what's coming into the country. I think vaccination is a more difficult one. We've tried not to be compulsory, but I do think if anyone's had contact with or has the symptoms, that they should be strongly offered vaccination, but also with diphtheria, you normally start antibiotics at the same time because that can help you head off the worst effects of it.
Okay. Well, listen, thank you very much, Dr. Andrew Vallance-Owen. He's a former CEO of Bupa and an NHS surgeon. Also, thank you very much to Kelvin McKenzie as well. Now, a Home Office spokesperson told us that we work closely with a range of partners within the community, including local authorities and health leads, to make sure that information is shared in a timely way, that everybody leaving the Manston Migrant Centre is given access to appropriate treatment. The risk of diphtheria to the public is very low due to high uptake of the diphtheria vaccine in this country. And we continue to work closely with the NHS and the UK Health Security Agency to support the individuals affected and limit the transmission of infection. You're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, we'll continue with the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, can we afford compulsory health screening for migrants? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, former Labour MP Stephen Pound and political commentator Albie Alan-Kona. Then at 5 o'clock, it's Outside. Our celebrity guest this week is a football legend. He played for Southampton his entire professional career in the 90s and was known to play in midfield. I'll give you another clue. He has a near-perfect penalty conversion rate from 47 out of 48 penalties. Any guesses? Stay tuned to find out more. Don't shout it out, Stephen.
I just worked it out.
It's all of that after the latest news headlines.
Hello, good afternoon. It's 4:35. I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. The Met Police say the murders of two teenagers in South East London are linked. The 16-year-old boys, Kian Solanki and Charlie Bortolo, were both stabbed to death yesterday afternoon around a mile apart in Greenwich. The Met's South East Deputy Commander has appealed for information.
On Saturday evening at around 5:10, police were called to reports of two people injured in two locations. The locations are approximately 1 mile apart. Emergency services attended immediately, and at each location they found a 16-year-old boy suffering stab injuries. Tragically, both boys died of their injuries.
Protests against COVID lockdown measures are continuing in China after 10 people died in a tower block fire in Urumqi. Demonstrators claim coronavirus measures, which have seen residents locked down for as long as 100 days, may have impeded their escape. Civil unrest has now spread to Shanghai and Beijing, with calls for President Xi Jinping to resign. At least 3 people, including a young girl, have died after a landslide in Italy yesterday. The island of Ischia, near Naples, was engulfed by heavy rain, causing a mudslide that flooded homes and swept away cars. Search and rescue operations are continuing today, with 10 people still missing. The government says the online safety bill will be updated next month to criminalise the encouragement of self-harm. It says the changes have been influenced by Molly Russell, the 14-year-old who ended her life in 2017 after viewing content linked to suicide and self-harm. The new bill would target online material that manipulates the vulnerable, making it illegal. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store? You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12, on TV, on radio and online.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Says it's coming up to 39 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And it's time for our great British debate this hour. And I'm asking, should health screenings for migrants be mandatory? Now, the Home Office has come under fire this week following reports that migrants suspected of contracting diphtheria have been sent to numerous towns and cities across the country. And that comes after the death of a 19-year-old man who was being held in Manston Processing Centre. Now, the Home Office said that it could have been caused by diphtheria, but the jury's out because they haven't had the post-mortem. And it's reported, though, there are now 70 cases, and officials fear that screening arrangements have broken down. Migrants have also been moved across the country without any record of whether they've been screened or not, or whether they've been receiving treatment for the high-risk, highly contagious disease. It's raised questions about the risk it could pose to the wider community and where the blame lies. So I'm asking you, should health screenings for migrants be mandatory? Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by former Labour MP Stephen Pound and also political commentator Albi Amankona. Right, Albi, I'm going to come to you first. What do you think?
I think that mandatory screenings should be happening for migrants. I think it's, first of all, really made me pause for thought that we're talking about people dying, teenagers, a 19-year-old dying from diphtheria in the United Kingdom in 2022. That's a disgrace. The fact that 70 people have diphtheria as a result of being in this Manston camp. As Kelvin was saying, it could be higher by Monday.
They might have come in with it. Some of them might have.
Well, that's not the point. They've come from France. The fact that people are dying in Europe from diphtheria is shocking, and it shouldn't be happening. And ultimately now what we need to do is solve the problem. So we can have a conversation about the migrants coming across the channel, but the ones that are already here, we need to be solving that problem. And I think one of the ways that we can do that so they can be treated as quickly as possible is by having these health screenings so that these people can be treated and so that this disease, which kills 5 to 10% of sufferers, doesn't end up killing more people than have already died.
Do you think that they should have mandatory vaccinations of diphtheria when they come?
I think people should be strongly encouraged to get a vaccine for a disease which has a 5 to 10% mortality rate and is, ripping its way through processing.
Because that's higher than COVID.
It's much higher than COVID. And I think there's a strong personal incentive for people to get it. I think people would just choose to get it, but I would probably draw the line at mandatory vaccination. I think the impetus is there enough.
Well, why not? As you come here illegally or across the channel, some people say it's not illegal, whatever. But you've come here this way. I would say that I would say that would be one of the things I would expect. But what do you think?
If you think of the biggest ever movement of migration in this country, unless you're going back to the Stone Age or whatever, was in America in the 1870s till about 1910, 1920. If you went to America in those days from Naples or Liverpool or Cork or Hamburg, wherever, you went to Ellis Island. That's where, and you were detained in Ellis Island until you'd been tested for pneumonia, for influenza, for a whole range of illnesses, and you weren't allowed off Ellis Island into New York or the same arrangements in Boston until you'd been screened. And the ships used to go back to Liverpool or to Hamburg if you tested negative. Now the situation we have here is that public confidence is through the floor now. Instead of talking about nonsense like Rwanda, which is just facile, ludicrous, it'll never ever happen.
Other places have done similar
okay,
things.
it ain't, the Israelis did it. They've sent 4,000 people out there. Every single one of them absconded, disappeared, and turned up coming back to Israel. Look, it ain't going to work. What we should be doing is, when you're arriving off the coast of Dover, you should actually be taken to a processing centre. Now, I know what'll happen. People will actually start piercing the sides of their rigid inflatable boats. We take them off when they're just off the shore, if they're in British waters. There has to be a central processing centre, and we have to know who they are. We have to get fingerprints.
How about a cruise ship? How about a cruise ship?
Well, the Scots have taken all those. They've got two.
There must be some more.
Yeah, well, that's a perfectly valid way of doing it. Yeah. I mean, at the moment in the Clyde, there are 2 cruise ships being, with about 1,200 people in that, which are paid for by the Scottish Government. But look, the idea that dispersing people around the country and then expecting them to stay there in the hotel, keep their heads down, when it's so utterly wrong. We should be able to process them at the first place, take the fingerprints, issue them with some sort of identity card, do the health screening, and then do the one thing that the Home Office is utterly incapable of doing so far, is actually acting responsibly, accurately and with speed, because the Home Office is the most sclerotic, out of control, completely unfit for purpose government organisation I dealt with in my 22 years as an MP.
But then, why has it taken so long for the Home Office ever to actually have some proper reform in the Home Office? You know, whether or not it's been a Labour government in power or a Conservative government that's in power, I am struggling to think of a good news story about the Home Office that I've ever heard in my entire life.
They're all working from home. That's good for them.
Well, we're talking about a problem that spanned, decades.
Yeah. No, Albie's absolutely right. There's a culture in the Home Office. A very good friend of mine, Tony McNulty, he was a Home Office minister, and he and I came into Parliament at the same time, went into the Home Office. I was in a different department. And he said there is this culture within the Home Office of absolute obstructionism. Alan Johnson, when he was Home Secretary, said he could hardly sleep at night because at every second of every hour, somebody in the Home Office was doing something which could potentially bring the government down. John Reid got bounced out of the Home Office because he was too tough on it. We really do need to do... Why can't we, an issue like this, the National Health Service is one thing, but on immigration, can we not please have a national consensus and stop playing silly politics with each other?
Well, it's true, because I was actually listening to a radio station and I heard David Lammy talking, and one of his questions was, he was saying, is it time to sort of get rid of soil improvement? It's like, and it's like, not enough. Look, I know. We can't just keep changing.
Well, the Home Office are thinking this is marvellous. You keep changing the captain of the ship.
They keep doing it, so nothing gets done. And if they don't like them, then they can all constructively work together to sort of get that person removed. Because these people, a lot of civil service servants, have been in the Home Office for many, many years, over numerous different governments. But in truth, though, I actually think this might come down to the issue of mandatory vaccination, because I know people say, oh, no, body autonomy and all that. Yes, OK, I understand, especially during COVID, we had a lot of that. But when it comes to a vaccine that is very well tested, very well tried, it's very well tolerated, and people in this country pretty much have to do it when we're born. So, like, I had to have the vaccine. I'm sure it was almost mandatory, pretty much. All the children, you couldn't really opt out of it. There wasn't really that point. So perhaps people coming here for things like diphtheria should actually have to be vaccinated. If they don't want to, then there's another option for them to go back to wherever it is that they've come.
I think there is a strong incentive for people to choose to get vaccinated themselves if they are living in crowded conditions amongst an area where there's a diphtheria outbreak. Any person with common sense would choose to get a vaccine. I'm not sure if there needs to be a law which says you must get this vaccine. I think the incentive is there and it's strong enough.
Well, you might say that, but people might do, OK, the COVID vaccine, we didn't know as much about it. So, and I understand why people are hesitant. I mean, I didn't get vaccinated without having a real think about whether I was going to do this thing. And I got lucky. It didn't affect me in a negative way, and hopefully it has helped me and it's not going to have any repercussions. But with this one, we already know that it's relatively safe. And I would say that just like when you go to, say, Ghana or something, they insist that you have yellow fever, all those, I think that diphtheria could be one of those that we actually do,
absolutely.
Especially for people coming
if you want to go to India nowadays,
way.
You've got to have a whole range of inoculations beforehand. But look, look, just think of the optics about this. You've got to cooperate. If you know, when I went to India a couple of weeks ago, I had this sort of Japanese something around it and all these malaria and all these things like that, because I cooperated with the person giving the injection. Suppose somebody's come from Syria, from South Sudan, and they say, we're now going to inject this into your arms. They could easily kick off violently against it. And do we really want to have the situation where we're strapping somebody down and injecting them?
No, we won't strap them down. No, you don't strap them down. If they don't do it, they go straight back. As simple as that.
Back to where?
Well, wherever.
Calais.
The last place they came from, which would be back to France.
Yeah.
Right, this show is nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voice, your opportunity to be on the show and tell us what you think about the topics we're discussing. This hour, let's head over to, where should we go? Bolton? The Wanderers? We're the Wanderers. Bolton. Let's have a chat with our GB viewer, GB voice, Jess Gill. Hello, Jess. Nice to see you. Jess, okay, so what do you think about this then? People coming over, they've got diphtheria, they obviously didn't know about it, then they spread it here, you know. Obviously, thankfully, we've got a vaccination programme, so people mostly probably wouldn't get it. But what is your view on this particular situation?
You know, Nana, I think this is a complete joke. I want to know how much this is going to cost the British taxpayer. Exactly. The NHS is completely overwhelmed as it is, and they want to add this next burden onto it. My mum has been waiting at least a year. She's in constant pain with her knee every time she needs to walk the dog. She's screaming in agony. She doesn't get help. She's been paying taxes all her life. Meanwhile, we let migrants cut the queue, you know, prioritise their healthcare with these, with this conversation about mandatory vaccines. I don't think that's fair. Quite frankly, the reason why this situation is happening is because we're not preventing them from coming into this country. The reason why this is happening is because it's overcrowded. And I think, quite frankly, we need to send them back and we need to establish our border.
Well, I see. Well, that's the common sense approach, Jess, and we all 100% agree with you. But the thing is, they're here, they're already here, and we have to do something about it. Otherwise, it could spread to the wider community or to those who are vulnerable who haven't been vaccinated. Jess, it's so good to talk to you. Thank you so much for sharing that story as well. That's Jess Gill. She's our great British voice. Right, well, let's see what you've been saying. Let's see. Richard says, obviously, they should be quarantined for a month, but I'd rather they came in legally in the first place. Well, see, that is where we have the controls. When people come in legally, then you can see what's what. Jay says they should be sent and hosted in Guernsey, with those successful being sent to the mainland and those refused sent back to France. Yeah. Well,
why don't we take fingerprints? Have you any idea?
Well, what's the point? Do you think the police can cope? We've got enough on these databases. We can't even catch our own home criminals, let alone anybody else's. Wayne says not that all migrants are, by the way. That's
no, but there are some in there. There's some very, very bad people.
Yes, of course.
Come over here. So what on earth is wrong with taking, you know... I'm on the liberal end of the spectrum here, and I think there's nothing wrong with actually taking the fingerprints.
Well, Wayne says, of course we can screen. It's a no-brainer to protect the wider tax-paying population. So, yeah, we should do. But, again, it's a cost. It's a huge cost to us, the British public. Right, there's a poll up on Twitter right now throughout the show asking, should health screenings for migrants be mandatory? 93% of you say yes. 7% of you say no. That's a huge load, and I would agree with you. Let's just remind you that the Home Office has moved to reassure the public about diphtheria and the outbreak, saying the risk of diphtheria to the public is very low due to the high uptake of the diphtheria vaccine in this country, and we continue to work closely with the NHS and the UK Health Security Agency to support individuals affected and limit the transmission of infection. You're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, it's time for Worldview. Donald Trump has a pre-Thanksgiving dinner with controversial rapper Kanye West and the far-right activist Nick Fuentes. Now, this all comes after announcing his presidential bid. I'll be getting the latest stateside, but first, we'll have a break. Back in a moment.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Good afternoon. This is GB News live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now it's time for Worldview. The war rages on in Ukraine and heavy snowfall is expected in Kyiv, with temperatures dropping below freezing day and also night. Now that's millions of people who still live in and around the Ukrainian capital remain with little heat and electricity. It's a very awful situation. Joining me to talk about this and about Russia and the conflict is political commentator and Russian expert Danny Armstrong. Okay, Danny. So, when the war first kicked off, I mean, we saw a massive outcry of support for Ukraine. Is there still quite a bit of support now, or is that feels like it's died down?
Well, it is, and I can't mention it without mentioning the World Cup. As you've mentioned in some of your monologues, Nana, the virtue signalling at the World Cup has reached kind of another level. Ukraine is no longer at the top of the news cycle. The current thing now is One Love armbands and LGBT rights in Qatar. What the current thing used to be was Ukraine. The war, of course, is still raging on in Ukraine, as you rightly say. There has been massive bombing campaigns by Russia that has meant that millions of Ukrainians are doing without electricity, doing without water. It means I can't keep in touch with a lot of people outside in Ukraine and can't bring their stories to places like GB News is the sad thing. And of course, they're being denied that escape from the war. A lot of them can't watch the World Cup because there's no electricity. But if they were watching the World Cup, they wouldn't see any Ukrainian flags like we did see in the Premier League, like we did see lots of footballers come out in support of the people who are affected by the conflict in Ukraine. Now, there's been an absence of Ukraine news here in the UK and, of course, out in Qatar. In Russia, there has been something of a spike in Ukrainian news, or anti-Ukrainian news, as it were. We've had stories of Russian volunteers saying they've stumbled across child organ harvesting facilities that have been built by Ukrainian soldiers. We've had Ukrainians that have been spreading symbols of Nazism in Qatar. Now, both stories were taken as huge propaganda, of course, as now there is nothing going on on the ground operationally in Ukraine. It kind of has reached a lull as the temperatures set in over there. Bitterly cold. The winter makes it impossible almost to get anything done on the ground. We've seen a spike in propaganda from the Russian side, but of course over here, Ukraine seems to be chopped liver.
Look, very briefly then, at the moment there was a little bit of talk about nuclear weapons. That sounds like that's stopped happening as well. Is there a fear that that's the way it's going to go? Or it feels like Putin is simply going to cut off the electricity supply and simply allow people to die, freeze? He's using the weather as the way, really, rather than the nuclear weapons. Has that talk of nuclear weapons died down?
Well, yeah, talk of nuclear weapons makes great headlines. I've always said that the threat of nuclear war benefits all sides rather than an actual nuclear war which benefits nobody, apart from if you're Russian and you believe that a world without Russia is not one that you want to live in. That ideology is shared rather, I wouldn't say widespread, but by a few very ultra-patriotic Russians. Now, nuclear war is a threat that Putin uses a great tool in this war. Of course, bombing infrastructure and bombing places that supply electricity to Ukrainian homes is another. It has been a big tactic of his, targeting this infrastructure. I expect it to continue, as well as we've seen huge bombing all over Ukraine. So, yes.
OK, thank you so much, Danny. Thanks for that catch-up. That's Danny Armstrong. He's a political commentator. Right, let's travel over stateside. Let's get over to America now, because Donald Trump has a pre-Thanksgiving dinner with controversial rapper Kanye West and the far-right activist Nick Fuentes. Now, this all comes after he was unbanned from Twitter and announced he's rerunning for the White House. Let's speak to Paul Duddridge. He's the host of the Politics People podcast. Paul, talk to me. Trump's pre-Thanksgiving dinner, Kanye and Nick Fuentes. Really? It's an interesting combo.
Well, yes. I mean, Trump's view of this is that he had invited, or he knew Kanye was turning up, but he didn't know he was bringing Nick Fuentes with him. But he still, he was gracious, and he hosted them both for dinner. But yeah, so this meeting with this political commentator, Nick Fuentes, he's described as a Gen Z white supremacist. And it's no different than Obama being pictured with Louis Farrakhan in 2015, or 2005. Or his association with Reverend Jeremiah Wright. It's a storm in a teacup, and it's not going to affect Trump's success or otherwise in 2024. What's interesting is that when you say he's been reinstated to Twitter and he's announced his presidency, it's like that could apply to Kanye, because Kanye was restored to Twitter last week and has announced his candidacy for 2024 as well. So, and he actually at this dinner offered Trump the position of his running mate, and so we can look forward to the Kanye Trump ticket. But I think it's reported that Trump turned him down very vociferously. But yes, so both men restored. But yes, they're trying to make something of this, and it's like Nick Fuentes.
Well, you can't be
is banned from everywhere.
But then you can't, if you're sort of far right, then you're hanging around with people of colour. It sort of slightly turns it into a bit of a, that doesn't really make that much sense. So maybe he is, maybe he isn't, but whatever. What about his chances, though, Trump's chances of winning? Because I heard that actually he hasn't got a good chance of winning. People are thinking that, he's a bit toxic in the eyes of even his pre-Trump supporters.
I am going to stay on the Trump train for as long as possible until it actually officially derails. And I'll tell you why. This is how he won last time. Everybody'd written him off, and he had no support from the establishment, from the political class. They'd written him off. And I like those odds, because if you actually see where his base can gather, they are vociferously, strongly on his side still. They're supporting him. The DeSantis, they did an interesting thing this week. They're looking to change the law in Florida. So DeSantis, if you are the governor of Florida currently as the law stands, and you stand for president and you don't win, you have to give an irrevocable letter saying that you will stand down as governor. They're changing the law. So we are basically seeing that DeSantis is obviously going to run against him. But Trump has never had the support of the establishment. He's only had the support of the people, and that's actually growing.
Interesting. And in one word, if you can, because we've got like literally 5 seconds, we're already over. US versus England. Good, bad, ugly?
Boring.
One
boring.
word.
It was bad.
Perfect. I think that's the word we wanted. Paul Duddridge, thank you so much. That's Paul Duddridge, host of the Politics People podcast. Yes, boring. That is the word for that match. This is GB News. Back in a moment. I've got a better one. Yawn in the USA. That was good. I stole that. That was the Stephen Pounds line. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics hitting the headlines right now. In a very few moments' time, I'm joined by a legendary England footballer at the top of the hour. It's in Outside. I can't tell you any more than that, except for that he is a legend. And for the great bit of debate, so I'm asking, should we have a referendum on net zero? That's after this, your latest news headlines.
Hello, good afternoon. It's 1 minute past 5. I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. The Met Police say the murders of 2 teenagers in south-east London are linked. The 16-year-old boys, Kian Solanki and Charlie Botello, were both stabbed to death yesterday afternoon around a mile apart in Greenwich. Police were granted additional search powers to determine whether the murders were related. Holding a press conference, the Met's South East Deputy Commander appealed for information.
On Saturday evening, at around 5:10, police were called to reports of 2 people injured in 2 locations. The locations are approximately 1 mile apart. Emergency services attended immediately, and at each location they found a 16-year-old boy suffering stab injuries. Tragically, both boys died of their injuries.
The government says the online safety bill will be updated next month to criminalise the encouragement of self-harm. It says the changes have been influenced by the death of Molly Russell, the 14-year-old who ended her life in 2017 after viewing content linked to suicide and self-harm. The new bill would target online material that manipulates the vulnerable, making it illegal. Alice Hendy is the founder of a suicide prevention charity. She lost her brother to suicide and says the bill should have come out sooner.
The online safety bill itself has taken far too long to come out. I mean, we've seen countless delays, countless revisions. It's seen revisions now under 3 prime ministers. This is an urgent bill, and the longer we leave it, the more lives, unfortunately, are going to be destroyed, and the more families out there are going to feel like mine.
Greater Manchester Police say a man whose body was found covered in potentially hazardous substances was sprayed with acid. 38-year-old Liam Smith's body was found in the street in the Kilburn Drive area of Wigan on Thursday. He had also been shot. The area is still cordoned off, and residents who are feeling unwell are being urged to contact authorities. A murder investigation is ongoing. This is GB News. That's all from me for now. Now, back to Nana.
Good afternoon. If you've just joined me, where on earth have you been? This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, coming on the way, we'll be talking about a very, very incredible footballer. It's time for Outside. We talk highs, lows and lessons learned. And what comes next on The Outside? And my celebrity guest this week is a football legend. Now, he played for Southampton his entire professional career in the 80s and was a midfielder. I'll give you another clue later on. Well, actually, it's covered. I'll give it to you now then. He's got a really good penalty conversion rate. It's 47 out of 48. That's probably given you the clue. He was also a regular football pundit. The mystery guest will be live here in about a minute's time. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should we have a referendum on net zero? According to the latest YouGov poll, 44% of adults support holding a national referendum on the UK's net zero carbon policy. With the cost of living crisis in full swing, people are currently choosing between heating and eating. Is this really the right time for the country to move towards net zero? And finally, I have a very special guest joining me at 5:45, Jesus Enrique Rosas. He's the body language guy, he's the body language expert, I love him. He has a very large YouTube following. He is known for analysing the Duchess of Sussex's every move. I'll be getting his expertise later on in this hour. Stay with me. Email me gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me at gbnews. So it's just coming up to 6 minutes after 5 o'clock, and it's now time for Outside. Did you guess it? Yes, Matt Le Tissier. He's a football legend. No, not legend, legend. Somebody spelled it wrong. 2 words, just one. He's been playing his entire professional career on the Southampton team. His name is almost synonymous with them. A creative attacking midfielder known for his ability to score superb goals, especially his fine efforts against Newcastle and Blackburn. He also had a near-perfect ability to finish from the 12-yard spot, converting 47 out of 48 penalties, making him one of the greatest ever penalty takers. Matt won the PFA Young Player of the Year in 1990 and has always been in the forefront of English football culture. He then became a football pundit as a panellist on the famous Soccer Sunday show with Jeff Stelling and co on Sky Sports. But after nearly 20 years, the outspoken football legend was let go as part of a major shake-up at the channel. How could they? He's too good for them. Matt now focuses his time on numerous projects, and I'm delighted to say that he's actually here live in the studio. Matt, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure.
It's really good to meet you at last. I've seen so much of you. I always see you on TV doing all sorts of things. But we need to talk about the England match. We need to talk about England versus America. Paul Dudridge called it boring. I looked up at the TV twice when it was on. I was in a pub. Well, actually, you were there as well.
I was indeed. And I was equally bored, I'd have to say. It was not one of the finest performances we've seen from our national team. But fortunately, the first game was very good, and we've put ourselves in a very strong position to go through to the knockout stages.
Yeah, that was lucky. We got a lucky 6-2 in the end? Now, you've played for one team most of all your football career, Southampton. Why did you stay with them? They don't pay that well, do they? Not like the others.
They weren't the highest payers, but money has never really been a motivating factor for me in my football career. So I was happy to stay where I was happy, and so yeah, there were various reasons at different times. There were various clubs that tried to buy me. The closest I came to leaving was to go to Spurs, which was the team I supported as a boy, so that was the only real temptation. But no, I decided to stick with Southampton. I felt like that was my club, my destiny, and I don't have a single regret about doing that.
Well, you did pretty well. I mean, 47 out of 48 penalties. That is a very harrowing thing, because obviously you saw the match where the 3 black players took the penalties and they missed. To be honest, I hadn't even noticed they were black. To be honest, I really didn't.
I don't think anybody
everyone
did.
started talking about it. I was like, what, really? Oh, I have to go watch that back. But that is harrowing to take a penalty. Or did you find it quite easy?
I actually quite enjoyed it in a macabre sort of way, really. I enjoyed the jeopardy of it. I enjoyed the pressure of the situation, really. I always felt like I was, quite good at taking them, and I felt like I was the favourite in that situation. I should be scoring from 12 yards. So I think one of the reasons why my record, I think, was so good is because I looked forward to it and had a really positive mental attitude towards it. And I think that really helped. You just kind of get rid of all the negativity in your head before you step up, and it helps a lot.
It's more like a psychological thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got to sort of outsmart them. You've got to make them think that, ha. You'll never guess where it's going to go. And then you sort of, yeah.
It is a game of cat and mouse. It really is. Especially if a goalkeeper has kind of looked at your record in the past and seen where you would normally hit penalties, and you got to make a decision as to whether or not you change your favourite corner or not.
What would your advice be to those penalty takers? Because a lot of the young players end up in that position, and they got to.
Advice, it's always difficult without knowing the individual player and his mindset. So firstly, I would say the first thing you've got to do is just try to erase all negative thoughts out of your mind when you're stepping up there. If you're in a penalty shootout, it is a high pressure situation. There's no doubt about that. But if you can be going into it with a positive frame of mind, it certainly helps. And those boys have got a lot of ability. You've got to have belief in your own ability, secondly, and trust your technique.
You could also practice the bin game. How many can you get in the bin? 1, 2, all 3 will go in. Focus, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways. A lot of people would say, choose your corner and then don't change your mind.
Don't change your mind.
But I actually was completely the opposite to that. I kept an open mind right up until the last second. So yeah, I was a little bit different, but it takes a lot of courage to do that.
Now, you were on Soccer Sundays for like 20 years.
Soccer Saturday.
Because I knew that, Soccer Saturdays. 20 years.
Pretty much. I think it was 2002 I retired. I did my first one in 2002 and then was sacked in 2020. So yeah, almost 20 years. And it was a fun time. It was a great show to be a part of. We had a lot of fun every Saturday afternoon. But somebody decided that we were perhaps having too much fun, and we can't be that popular.
But I know it was very popular.
It was.
In my head, I was saying, "Don't say Sunday," and I said Sunday. I'm sorry about that. Sorry. Now, you played professionally for England as well.
I had 8 caps for England. Yeah. That was something that when I look back on my career, I would have loved to have played more for my country. I didn't really get that many opportunities. And the brief opportunities that I did get, I probably didn't do myself justice in those opportunities at all, really. So a little bit disappointing from the country perspective, but very proud nonetheless that I did manage to get 8 caps.
Do you think England have any chance of victory in this World Cup at all?
I mean, if you base it on the first game against Iran, you might say yes. If you base it on the American game, then no. I think there are probably better teams than us in this tournament, but as we've seen, there are some big shocks.
Japan?
Yeah, Japan have beaten Germany. Saudi Arabia beat Argentina. So there's been some big shocks. Morocco just today beat Belgium. So
does that mean that they're out, the ones that get properly beaten, or do they get a chance?
No, they've still got a slight chance of qualifying, but it makes it very tough when you lose a game in the group stages.
And who do you think will win?
I think I said at the start Brazil or Argentina.
Yeah.
You know, given Argentina's first result, I was kind of a bit shaky, but they managed to pull it round in the second game against Mexico. So I think those two teams for me, and I would perhaps throw France in because I think Kylian Mbappe is one of those players who could win matches on his own, and he could perhaps,
Well, France often good, aren't they? Because I remember when I was working at a radio station, I worked with all men. And I got France in the sweepstakes, and I won. France often win.
Perfect. My daughter did the same thing at her school. She's very excited about perhaps winning some sweets.
Yes, sweets. How old is she?
She's 13.
13. I thought you were going to say 30. I was going to say, hang on a minute, it's quite old to be wanting to win sweets. Now, you're quite outspoken in quite a few different things. What are you up to at the moment? What's your...
So I've been doing some after-dinner speaking. I do some work on social media on Getter. I do my own live streams on there on a Monday night at 8 o'clock, a programme called The Flip Side, where I try to give a voice to people who have been silenced over the last couple of years. So tomorrow evening, Dr. Peter McCulloch is on my show tomorrow. And I've got to speak to some fascinating people, and I've learned a lot of stuff from it. It's not just about COVID. I have sports people on there as well, and we try and touch on lots of different subjects. So yeah, that's been a whole lot of fun, and really enjoyed my time working with Getter, and hope it continues.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to see Getter get quite big.
Yes.
Because obviously we've got Twitter. We need somebody to really compete with Twitter.
Absolutely, and of course I'm now going to be a regular contributor to the Dan Morton Show every Monday night at 10:40. So I'm looking forward to that as well. I did my first one last week. So.
That's very good. It's so good. No, I watch it, so I see you on there all the time. I'm like, I'm going to get him on my show. Dan's very protective, so I got lucky. Your view, though, the World Cup and all this virtue signalling, do you think it's time for it to stop, or are you with it? What's your...
it drives me mad. I just wish people would just let the footballers get on with playing football. Stop with the virtue signalling. My own point of view on it is that if you're going to go to a country, I think you should be obeying by the laws in that country. I think... if you don't want to obey by the laws in that country, then don't go. It's as simple as that. And I think, it's very difficult for people to try and take the moral high ground when, our countries have also done some pretty bad stuff in the past, and countries evolve at different times. So I think what I would prefer to do is to allow the people in that country to be the ones that are protesting and trying to enact change in that country. And I think if you're going to go to that country, you just got to go, well, I think if we get people come to our country, we expect people to abide by our laws. So why shouldn't we be any different?
And I have to ask you about taking the knee, because I mean, as a black person, I think it's a pointless gesture, personally.
Yeah, I've said that for a long time. I've very much thought that it is an empty gesture. It is virtue signalling. It's not really making a huge amount of difference. In fact, I think a lot of the time it actually it does the opposite. So yeah, I'm pretty surprised that we're still going on. It was quite ironic that this all started with the George Floyd stuff, and yet we're there playing against the United States of America, where the offence took place, and yet we're the ones taking the knee and they're the ones standing up. So it says everything, really.
Well, it does, really, doesn't it? And what do you think FIFA should be doing about this? Because FIFA have got power. They could change this. Why do you think FIFA don't really do anything about it?
But FIFA have got too much power, in my opinion. They literally change the rules of the country when they go in to host a World Cup there. So I think that organisation itself needs to be looked at. I think it's a pretty corrupt organisation. I don't think there's any controversy in saying that. I think it's a lot of stuff that's been proven in the past years. I mean, the fact that the World Cup is in Qatar, I think tells you everything you need to know. I guess I feel a little bit sorry for the top man there, Infantino, because
You feel sorry for him?
Well, he's kind of taken over an organisation that was in a pretty bad place. With Sepp Blatter's reign there, it was a tough gig. That's not to say that I agree with him. I thought his speech was completely mad.
He had a lot of feelings.
I don't think he helped himself in that
that was
situation.
ridiculous.
You know, I think if people did have sympathy before that, I think that all eroded pretty quickly.
Yeah, that was a ridiculous speech. That it was almost comical. It was like comedy. It's like, well, why would you do that?
It was like a Ricky Gervais.
I feel this. I was like, I feel African. I was like, no, you don't.
No,
you haven't got a clue. You haven't got a clue. You're a rich man who has no idea of the real world, and you're in a very privileged position, and not much seems to be happening with FIFA.
That's very well put.
What do you think is the way forward then in terms of football and sport? Because when I look at it, I think a lot of those players get so much money. It's so expensive, the kit and everything. Do you think that perhaps they should be paid a bit less and they could start? What's your view on the money side of it?
That's a whole different debate. You know, the footballers earning so much money. Obviously, it would be very difficult as a footballer to actually turn around to your football club and say, actually, don't pay me that much.
Yeah.
Just pay me a bit less. You know, that would take some doing. I think the blame lies with the owners of these football clubs who just want to, I don't know, it's just some kind of game where, you know, who's got the biggest ego, who's got the biggest checkbook. I'm going to go and win the Champions League. It all takes away, I think, a little bit about the love of sport when it becomes all about money.
It's quite unhealthy, I think, especially to pay the players so much. It seems, you know, because I think you can lose yourself in that, and they're very young as well, so it's dangerous.
That was one of the points I was going to make. Having that much money at a young age is incredibly dangerous.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen with the stuff with Mason Greenwood and all that kind of stuff, that there are certainly issues there. I think there might be a case of delaying giving all that money to the players. They can earn that money, but don't give it more at such a young age, because I think, you know, they should be a little bit older and a little bit wiser before they start having that kind of disposable income.
Yeah. Well, listen, you're wearing a little... What's that about?
That's the Vaccine Injury Bereaved Group. Okay. Just trying to shine a little bit of a light on the people that have been injured, that are kind of being ignored by our government at the moment. And I think our government has behaved disgracefully in the way that they've treated those people. So just try and highlight it any opportunity I can get.
Well, listen, it's really good to talk to you. You're back on Dan's show, then when are you back on?
Tomorrow night, 10:40.
You see, luckily I got you, Matt, because usually if you're going there, you're not allowed to be here the day before, so Dan's going to kill me. But thank you, Matt.
Our pleasure.
Thank you so much. It's really good to talk to you. That, of course, is Matt Le Tissier. He's a former professional footballer. You can catch him on Dan Button's show tomorrow night. That's from at 9 o'clock. Now, coming up, it's the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should we have a referendum on net zero? According to the latest YouGov poll, 44% of adults support holding a national referendum on the UK's net zero carbon policy. But is it right? Is it the right time amid the cost of living crisis as well? All of that is on the way after this.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something good happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
And it's about standards and public life. No, I'll tell you what's hypocrisy, Narendra.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin.
We believe in the UK.
No bias, no censorship.
It just doesn't make sense to me. He wasn't doing his job as Chancellor.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
It's 22 minutes after 5 o'clock. If you've just joined me, where have you been? We're live, we're on TV, we're online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and don't forget you can download the GB News app and you can check out all the programmes. Now, it's time, though, for our great British debate this hour, and I'm asking, should we have a referendum on net zero? According to the latest YouGov poll, commissioned by Car26, 44% of adults supported holding a national referendum on the UK's net zero carbon policy. Now, after excluding those who answered don't know, excuse me, 62% were in favour of a nationwide vote, which is up 4% from last year. And from those who voted in 2019 in the election, Labour supporters were 66% in favour. Liberal Democrat supporters, which there are hardly any of them left, were at 60%, even do they still exist? And 56% of the Conservative voters were in favour. And with the cost of living crisis in full swing and the government reinstating their ban on fracking, how can we afford to heat our homes whilst moving towards net zero? So for the great British debate this hour, I'm asking, should we have a referendum on net zero? I'm joined now in the studio by Director of Car26, Lois Perry. Lois.
Hello.
Thank you very much. Good that you got the memo. Same colour.
I have, yeah, I got the memo. Thanks for that. But you're a little bit more neon than me.
Yes, I'm slightly more, but we're still both yellow. OK, so first of all, the poll, this referendum, do you think that this is quite a reflective... Do you think it's reflective of what people are actually thinking?
Well, yeah, absolutely. But even for me, there were a few surprises. I mean, we're being constantly told that young people are massively in favour of net zero, and actually, with the excluding of the don't know, the 18 to 24-year-olds has gone from 56% in favour of referendum last year to 78%. 78%. We don't hear that on the MSM, do we, the mainstream media? You'd think they were all super gluing themselves to roads and throwing milk all over Fortnum and Masons, but no, I mean, it's extraordinary. And at 58% overall last year, 62% this year. This is definitely indicative. I mean, you and I know that black cab drivers are the main indicator of this kind of stuff. And every single time I get in a black cab, they're telling me that they think it's all a load of old nonsense. And people are really, really angry. But interestingly enough, the capital has gone up. London, 51% to 61%. Scotland, 54% to 72%. People are annoyed, they don't feel they've been consulted, and they want to have a say. This is much bigger than Brexit, even.
Well, I think it is. And I think what it is because it feels like the science, in some ways, is somewhat dubious. I mean, like, if you want to have a referendum, and as we learned from Brexit, that they didn't give us all the details, but then nobody really knew.
No.
On this one, again, nobody really knows, but we could get some detail. I'd like people to start talking about this whole carbon issue, and I'd like to hear both sides of the debate, instead of what was happening previously, which where we had to follow one particular narrative. You couldn't question it.
Oh, no, you couldn't, because then you are a denier, which I think is an extremely insulting word to use for lots and lots of reasons. But at Car26, the thing we'd be most excited about in terms of having a referendum, or even a debate about having a referendum, is having debate. The BBC have got a policy to never, ever discuss anything to do with climate change that doesn't have the premise completely 100% that it's caused by man and is man-made.
Well,
that's disgusting.
Well, like I say, I did actually used to work for the BBC, and I can tell you that you're pretty close to the mark.
Okay.
You weren't really supposed to.
But they'd have to if there's
really
referendum,
question the actual premise of it. No, you couldn't really do that. I'm well aware because I worked there, so I know.
Right. Oh, okay. So thank you for confirming that.
You couldn't really question the premise of it. You could talk about it though, but you know, I was always very wary of mentioning that. I wasn't, fully on board with it.
Well, MPs really need to sit up and take notice of this, especially the Labour support, 53% last year, gone up to 66% this year. Lib Dems, as you said, gone up Tories, funnily enough, have gone down very slightly. They've got a little bit greener, I don't know, or maybe, you know, somebody's got some subsidies and it's changed their view.
But what we're calling Conservative these days isn't Conservative.
No,
anyway.
where is the Conservative
I don't know where they
Party? But as I say, I do think this will be bigger than Brexit because I think that 70%, once it's been, I think the figure will be about 70% who actually want to vote against net zero policies in the referendum once it's actually been debated properly. I really, really do. And these figures are much higher than Brexit ever was. I'm quite excited and encouraged by this, but, you know, are the MPs going to take notice? There is only one political party, I think, at the moment that is anti-net zero, and that's Richard Tice's Reform Party. And, you know, they don't, at this present point in time, have any seats in Parliament. Could this help them? Or will the other parties suddenly sit up and take notice?
Well, no, Keir Starmer was talking about his decarbonisation strategy and everything else like that, but he clarified that it was decarbonisation of electricity. But, you know, we'll see, because I'm going to have a stay there, Lewis. I'm joined now by former Chief Executive of Energy UK, Angela Knight. Angela, thank you very much for joining me. OK, so what do you think, then? A referendum, do you think it will effectively cover everything that comes into sort of tackling net zero and climate change? Do you think it's something that people could potentially, should really be asking for?
Well, I'm not surprised that people are asking because in some respects there's been a lot of railroading. You know, here's the policy and that's it, without an explanation. Intrinsically, I should say, you know, it doesn't matter what it is. I'm not in favour of referendums. I'm much more in favour of the parliamentary democracy in which people vote for a party based on a number of policies. And I do think in recent years, though, it has been the case that the majority of policies tend to be ignored and it just comes down onto one. But nevertheless, I'm not in favour of referendum. And the reason that I'm not is because they tend to be both a yes-no when the issue underneath is much more complicated. Now, on the whole question of net zero, decarbonising and whatever, you know, I'm terribly sorry. I missed the name of the lady who's your other speaker, so I apologise. I apologise to her for that. But she's made a number of points with which I agree. Firstly, that the issues are never debated properly. Secondly, that somehow it's become absolutely taboo to question anything in respect of carbon. And number three is that all of a sudden you get a policy, it's net zero, and the first you know about is it starts to cost you money. So I do think that there's a lot to be said on this issue, as with many others, about having what I call a proper and serious debate. Because I do think that we have to clean up our act as a country in a lot of areas. But how we do it, the speed at which we do it, and the cost are very, very critical. And with the whole decarbonisation programme, which is, of course, on electricity rather than anything else, because we have gas central heating, other countries don't. And I'm a firm believer of the story that when the UK signed up for various carbon targets in Europe, it thought it was talking just about electricity and not gas. But I do think that with this whole area of reducing carbon, it is important, but before one goes too far down the line, we have to work out who pays, how much, and for what. And wind is not the only answer by any manner of means.
It's not the answer at all.
Sorry. Angela, wait right there. I'm going to bring Lois in as well, and we can have a sort of three-way discussions, because Lois wanted to say something. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting what you were saying, Angela. It's nice that you agree with me on quite a few of those points, but about the cost-benefit analysis, there hasn't been a cost-benefit analysis. And in fact, I think Peter Lilly on this show the other day revealed that when the Climate Change Act, which has been one of the most monumental acts that's ever gone through Parliament, was nodded through in 2008, he went to get the information on it and found that the seal had not been broken on the explanatory document, which gave more details about the Act. And in fact, even within that document that no other MP had opened, as far as he was concerned, there was no cost-benefit analysis in there in any case. So
did he actually say that? He's actually said that?
That's my understanding from Brian Catt, actually. And he spoke to him on the telephone about it.
But he hasn't actually said that, though, because we haven't heard him say that.
Right, so Peter Lilly told Brian Catt, and Brian Catt checked that I could convey that story on air today. So that it is my understanding that that is the case.
OK.
Yeah.
Have you any thoughts on that, Angela?
Yes, well, first of all, I rate Peter Lilly very highly. He's an experienced politician. He's been around for a long time, and he's held a number of proper briefs. And I am aware that Peter is concerned in this area. I of course cannot comment on what may or may not have happened in respect of MPs fully looking at the information. In some respects, it wouldn't surprise me. And it is also the case that there has been some history, and I don't know whether it is in this area or not, but there has been some history of where cost-benefit analysis simply saying the benefit is a public good and therefore all costs are justified. So I take and understand, the points that have been conveyed about Peter. However, we still need to do something about cleaning up our act. We still need to do something about replacing our old reliable power stations with new ones. And I personally would go for the small-scale nuclear reactors, which can be built in a couple of years and cost a couple of billion.
But we should also keep our gas on stream as well.
Hang on a second. While it's still a big number, it will gain investors that aren't just the government. And furthermore, they can be on the same places as other existing power stations, nuclear or otherwise, and therefore you haven't got to move the grid. So there's a whole piece about giving us security and a low carbon security. And by the way, irrespective of my view on the carbon debate, I would still go for the small-scale nuclear reactors.
I want Lois to respond.
A very good proposition.
Yeah, I mean, obviously nuclear is very much part of the energy mix, and I completely agree with you. But, electricity is great for lots of things and not that great for others. For example, it's very inefficient in terms of heating homes. Heat pumps, for example, are very, very inefficient and only work in new builds and in very big houses and all sorts of different variables that they actually work well in. Electric cars are, completely unaffordable and a bit of a waste of time as far as I'm concerned for most people. But it is my belief that the whole electrifying of absolutely everything and having one power source is actually extremely dangerous. And that's why we should have gas. That's why we should be fracking, because we should have a diversity of different energy streams. But of course, if everything isn't electric, if everything isn't smart, then things can't be remotely turned off and it's more difficult to control people, which I believe is actually the aim of a lot of these policies on net zero.
And Angela, your response very briefly to that.
Yes. I have. I'm in agreement with you about gas central heating, very much so, and I'm in agreement that gas has got a part to continue to play for some time. Frankly, there's been a lot of tosh talked about some of the technologies. I come from the engineering industry, so I'm hoping that I know slightly more on what I'm talking about than was otherwise. But that's a bit of a risky statement to say on air at the best of times. Heat pumps have always been something that's available, but they're not particularly efficient. As you rightly say, you do need to engineer your house from start around heat pumps rather than trying to insert it at a later
Angela,
date.
we're running out of time because we've got to head to the news, which is I was really enjoying that. We've got to talk about this for ages. We're going to have a big round table on this discussion. Angela Knight, thank you so much for joining me. She's a former chief executive for Energy UK, and of course, Lois Perry, Pariah.
Lois Pariah. No, not anymore. Thank goodness.
Of Car 26. Thank you so much, both. It's really good to talk to you both. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is GB News. We're live on TV, online, and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, still to come, we'll continue our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should we have a referendum on net zero? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, former Labour MP Stephen Pound and political commentator Albi Amankona. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Hello, it's 5:35. I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom with the headlines. The Met Police say the murders of two teenagers in south-east London are linked. The 16-year-old boys, Kian Solanki and Charlie Bortolo, were both stabbed to death yesterday afternoon, around a mile apart in Greenwich. The Met South East Deputy Commander has appealed for information.
On Saturday evening, at around 5:10, police were called to reports of two people injured in two locations. The locations are approximately 1 mile apart. Emergency services attended immediately, and at each location they found a 16-year-old boy suffering stab injuries. Tragically, both boys died of their injuries.
Protests against COVID lockdown measures are continuing in China after 10 people died in a tower block fire in Urumqi. Demonstrators claim coronavirus measures, which have seen residents locked down for as long as 100 days, may have impeded their escape. Civil unrest has now spread to Shanghai and Beijing, with calls for President Xi Jinping to resign. At least 3 people, including a young girl, have died after a landslide in Italy yesterday. The island of Ischia near Naples was engulfed by heavy rain, causing a mudslide that flooded homes and swept away cars. Search and rescue operations are continuing today, with 10 people still missing. The government says the online safety bill will be updated next month to criminalise the encouragement of self-harm. It says the changes have been influenced by the death of Molly Russell, the 14-year-old who ended her life in 2017 after viewing content linked to suicide and self-harm. The new bill would target online material that manipulates the vulnerable, making it illegal. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Back to Nana in just a moment.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12, on TV, on radio and online.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
.39 after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. We are the People's Channel. It's time now for our Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, should we have a referendum on net zero? According to the latest YouGov poll, commissioned by Car 26, 44% of adults supported holding a national referendum on the UK's net zero carbon policy. And after excluding those who answered don't know, 62% were in favour of a nationwide vote, which is up 4% from last year. And from those who voted in 2019 in the election, Labour supporters were 66% in favour, Liberal Democrat voters were 60% and 56% of Conservative voters were in favour. And with the push for net zero coming at such fiscally terrible times for most of us, can we really afford these policies, or can we maybe afford not to do them? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should we have a referendum on net zero? Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined now by Albie Amankona and also Stephen Pound. We'll start with you, Stephen. Net zero, are you all into it?
Well, I think we've got to aim for it because, I mean, just look what's happening in the world. Well, look what happened in Ischia yesterday. Look what's happening this summer. We had the hottest day ever in the United Kingdom in July, at over 40 degrees.
Well, since we can remember.
So, well, you know, we got records going back 1,000 years, but something's happening.
Years?
Yeah, of course we have.
1,000 years of temperatures every day.
Yeah, no. People have been making notes about the weather and the temperature in Europe. You know, for easily 1,000 years.
We don't know how accurate.
Okay,
that is.
may not be. Okay, look. The point being that survey you just talked about, I'd take that with a very, very large pinch of salt. It didn't say how many people were surveyed. It didn't say whereabouts in the country. It didn't say anything about the age group. So the point is, if you had a referendum, you're up against a brick wall because what would the question be? You know, are you in favour of net zero? Yes or no? Everybody's going to say yes. But then
what makes you think they're all going to say yes?
Because
I'm not in favour of it. I would say no.
But you want peace you don't want climate change in the present day, do you?
That's on the premise that it is
exactly,
isn't it?
precisely.
But that's the thing, we don't know that, and I'd rather that people were honest and started actually talking about the climate, whether it's a natural phenomenon, whether it's a cycle. I mean, look, the dinosaurs were here. They were huge. They did massive, great, and they gave off a lot of methane. Those things, you know, that years ago...
They were also hit by an asteroid the size of Mexico. I mean, which is possible. We had a nuclear winter for 2,000 years.
But think about it, the climate may have been hotter.
Yeah. It was a lot hotter when the dinosaurs were around, but obviously we're in a completely different era now, and that was 65 million years ago. But I think
the planet is still here, though.
Yes, the planet is still here. But on the issue of a referendum on net zero, personally, I mean, if we look at the two referenda that we've had recently in the United Kingdom, we had the Scottish referendum in 2014 and the Brexit vote back in 2016.
And the proportional representation.
Both and the alternative vote, exactly. All very divisive referenda. I would say Brexit and the Scottish nationalism referendum more so than others. And they've left lasting scars on society that still exist to today. So my view would be I don't want another divisive referendum in this country, especially on an issue where actually if we look at a lot of the polling, I know Onward has done some polling, 64% of Brits support net zero, about 51% of people who would vote Conservative support net zero. You know, this seems to be an issue that a lot of people have decided on. In fact, at the last general election, 30 million people voted to back net zero supporting parties.
Well, didn't they all support net zero? I mean, didn't Labour support net zero? Didn't Tories support net zero? You didn't really have much choice because we know that it's literally a two-party system. So whoever you voted for, you'd have got net zero. So that was not really... If there was somebody, who actually... If Labour had said no to net zero and Tory had, then you could argue that, but they all supported it.
I just imagine at that moment, the window behind you shatters and Nigel Farage bursts in and he says, what about me? Because he was making the case, he could have got the vote for it. But look, surely everybody accepts that there is more carbon in the atmosphere now, there's more carbon dioxide being...
We don't know whether that's a good
OK, no, that's stage one. We also accept that we've now getting weather situations now which are bizarre. We've never seen anything like it before. Is there a correlation between those two? Let's look at the science.
I don't know whether we have had, you know, like we have gone through this thing where even if you look at the weather maps, even the weather maps have changed, as in now they're fiery red to say when they're only maybe
Scorchio.
So they seem to be, and Laura Dodsworth has talked about the nudge unit that's nudging us towards net zero as well. So there is a sort of brain kind of washing in a sense that we must go this way. We must.
I see where you're going.
I think we need to question it a bit more.
The Thames used to freeze over. The Thames froze over in the 18th century. They had to have the frost fair in the 17th century on the Thames. We had a fair on it. You know, these things can happen. But what I'm saying is it's now happening faster and more frequently.
That's what you think. That's what we don't know the full picture.
Look, I take the point about the heat maps and things maybe being overrode, but ultimately, you know, transitioning from dirty fossil fuels to nuclear and green energy sources can only be a good thing. I support that, so do most British people.
Depends whether you live in Niger, where they mine for uranium. Because if you live there, then they've ruined the ecosystem and all the people there are ill because in those areas. I think we need to be very careful what we're saying here because we're going to be mining for lithium. So there'll be young people being, you know, there'll be the slave usual thing, you know, taking all resources.
Mine for oil.
But
coal,
I'm saying,
gas.
but we're also mining for things like that as well. So I'm saying that we need to look at the full environmental impact, not just the end result where there's less carbon, but what is the trail? And if the trail ends up that we're using more carbon, I think we need to look at it properly. But this show's Nothing Without You and Your Views. Let's welcome our great British voice on, your opportunity to be here and tell us what you really think about what we're discussing. I've got four of you. Let's start with Olivia Parry in Surrey. Olivia, you've got about 30 seconds because I've talked too much. Go on.
Yeah, green energy is a good idea, but At what cost? I looked up how much the Brexit referendum cost us. It was £129 million. We're in a cost of living crisis, and we need to look after the people who need help with their energy costs rather than spend money on a referendum. We need to invest more in the NHS. We need to invest more in defence. We need to invest more in food security. These are the priorities that we have to think of.
So no referendum for you. No referendum. All right, Lee, what about you? Referendum on net zero? 30 seconds, Lee.
Absolutely. Referendum on net zero, because it's going to cost, personally, I've got to stick a drive in the back of my garden, which is going to cost me money to put in an electric point to charge a car. And that's just one of the costs. And plus, I've got to switch over from gas to electric, another cost. So it's just cost to get to net zero. I'm not prepared to do it, not without science and without discussing the science.
Exactly. And a referendum would at least allow us to do that. Let's go to Julie Ford. She's there in Surrey. Julie.
Hi, Nana. Yeah, I'm against a referendum, to be honest with you. I think it's going to be yet another divisive tactic from the government to make us think about something else while they're doing whatever they're doing over in the corner. For me, I agree with what Olivia said, and I also agree with what Louis, your panellist, said, Angela Knight as well, that really we've got to look at the entire diversity of this, because it isn't just about reducing the carbon, it's the impact of how that is going to be, especially on industry as well, and we need to really consider that.
Okay, thank you for that, Julie. Lastly, let's go to Miranda Richardson, not the Miranda Richardson, I always do that to you, Miranda. She's there in Northampton. Miranda, you've got about 30 seconds.
Hi, Nana. Do you know what? I think one thing we've got to look about is we're looking at net zero in 2050, 28 years away. Now, I know these things don't happen immediately and don't happen overnight, but the public as a whole at the moment are worrying about what's going to happen at the end of December. I think we need to strip things back for them. We need to be a bit more realistic. We need to explain to people what this is going to be, because actually people at the moment, they don't want to think about that. They want to think about what's happening now.
They want to think about what's happening now.
Exactly. I'm worrying about something that may or may not affect them, because another party will come in and change the goalposts yet again.
Because basically whatever they're talking about, Miranda, is going to cost them a fortune. And
it's going to cost them. It's going to move.
Well, listen, Julie, thank you very much. Julie in Sheffield, Olivia from Surrey, Lee in Bedford and Miranda in Northamptonshire. Thank you so much. My great British voice is there. So great. Thank you. Right, now, I've got to say, I'm very excited to say that I'm joined by a very special guest. It's so exciting. Jesus Enrique Rosas is a body language expert. He's the body language guy. He's amassed a huge following on YouTube, analysing people's movements to understand their thoughts and feelings. Most notably, he reads the body language of the royal family, especially the Duchess of Sussex in his video. Jesus joins me now. Hello, body language guy. So good to see you.
Thank you for this invitation. Long time we were arranging this from a long time, and finally we're here. Thank you for having the opportunity to, well, talk about body language and, yes, what everybody is talking about all the time, especially when we talk about the royal family, all these signals, all these silent gestures that say so much without words.
So look, talk to me about what you see in the, because I think we've got a clip here of the Oprah interview with Harry and Meghan, and a lot of people talk a lot about it. But from your perspective, what did you analyse from that?
No, nobody prepares you.
Yeah, I remember that clip because it was the thing that sparked it all for me. I think I analyzed that like 2 days after the Oprah interview. It was the moment that you see that Meghan puts her hand on Harry's. Harry's going to say something. He's going to answer Oprah's question about if Meghan had any kind of training as a royal, and Meghan just cuts him on the spot. And that's something that everybody saw right there. It was unmistakable. And for me, it's funny because that interview was it's a complete volume, a study on body language, and that exact moment told you a lot about this couple dynamics. It's something that we can learn. It's just like 5 seconds or something, but even so, it can tell you a lot about a couple's body language and dynamics. And I think that's why people are so invested in following what is this happening with the Duke and Duchess of Sussex.
Well, what we'll do is we want you to be a regular so we can get some clips of the latest thing that's happening. All right, what about my body language then? What can you see about me? Be nice.
Oh, you're really secure and confident, and we can trust what you say because you have a constant tone of voice. You look into the camera. You're relaxed. Your shoulders are straight. You're standing straight. So that projects confidence, and that makes us trust what you say.
Oh, thank you, Jesus. That's lovely. Well, how can people sort of look at body language? What should they be looking at? You know, when somebody's sort of lying or you're asking somebody something, what should they be looking at? What's the big giveaway?
Well, I think that the mistake what we all make at the start is trying to say that, well, this gesture means something, this other gesture means another thing. And I think we don't dedicate that much to listening, to active listening, because we are constantly thinking, oh, I'm going to wait until this person stops talking so I can answer, or I'm going to say what I want to say about this. And we don't pay attention to the other person. So we have to be active listening, actively looking at the other person so we can, well, pick up those signals. Because if we are just trapped in here all the time, we can't be picking any of those silent clues.
Well, listen, if people want to find you, because you're going to be joining us next week on Saturday for our Royal Roundup segment, where we'll do a bigger feature. But if people want to find you, where do they look for you?
Well, you can look for me as the body language guy in virtually every single social media channel, especially on my YouTube channel.
Yes, thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you on Saturday next week. Take care. That is our body language guy. The body language guy, he's so good. Honestly, seriously, he is. I love watching his clips on YouTube. Check him out. Right, well, let's see. We'll chat to my panel in just a moment. But it's time for Supplement Sunday, where me and my panel discuss stories. Just somebody emailed me and said, it should be my panel and I. You're good at English. It should be... Well, my panel and I. I can't even say it. My teeth stuck to my lips.
My panel and I.
My panel and I. Discuss a bit, me and my panel discuss stories that caught our eye.
Me and the Soul Crew.
Let's start with Stephen's supplement. What's yours? Yours is about cats going vegan.
Well, I don't like cats. Let's just get that out there straight away. No, I've got no time for cats at all. And one of the things I don't like about cats is what they do to human beings, because you know, some of the people who are cat owners are absolutely barking mad. Now, there's this woman whose name I won't detail, is one of the Sunday papers, who's giving her cats a vegan diet. Now, she's also, in the house, she's got some rescue rats. Now, so you've got this woman who's a cat woman and the rescue rats. Now, if you start to give these rescued rats a vegan diet, well, I don't like to think what's likely to happen. But everybody knows that cats are carnivorous. They'll pretty much eat anything as long as it's got blood in it somewhere. And the idea that you can turn cats onto a vegan diet is just so ludicrously ridiculous. It's like the sort of the microbiotic craze back in the 60s. So as far as I'm concerned, what's caught my eye is crazy cat woman giving her rescue rats the same vegan diet as the cats.
No, are you a vegan? Yes or no?
No.
Are you?
No, certainly not. But I am a cat person.
Are you?
I am.
I quite like them because they're independent, but dogs are so cute. Well, Albie, you've got one. It's all about Matt Hancock making the final of I'm a Celebrity.
It is all about Matt Hancock.
God.
I mean, who would have thought that when I'm a Celebrity, get me out of it? Well, I certainly didn't think that he would end up in the final.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I'm really surprised by is I've actually found myself to be maybe a bit turned around by Matt Hancock.
Resist.
I actually voted for him 4 times in the final to win.
To win?
Well, to win.
Not to do the trial.
I'd like to see Matt Hancock win. I think everyone likes an underdog in Britain. He was treated, I think, quite badly by some of the celebrities, and ultimately, you know, everyone likes an underdog. But I think this is a separate issue from how he handled the pandemic. I see that as something which is very much separate. But he's been a very entertaining figure to watch on I'm a Celebrity.
But also, we are all human and we all make mistakes. Sometimes mistakes can cost lives, which is not great.
Yes, I did a reality TV about 15 years ago, and that was a mistake.
Well, listen, I've got my supplement. Which one was it?
What was I?
It is about Cambridge.
No, what was yours? What was your
a thing called At the Sharp End, where I had to go into Dartmoor prison for a fortnight.
Oh, God, we don't hear anymore.
No, they let me go.
They let you go. They let him out in the end. Right, and now onto my supplement. A Cambridge research student has claimed that Jesus was transgender.
Oh,
he said that
Lord.
The side wound dictated that the Christ's body was that of a transgender person. The Dean of Cambridge. I mean, they still can't even work out whether Jesus was black or
This
white.
is my
so to
body
work out
language.
Transgenders is something beyond me. The Dean of Cambridge University stepped in and defended the view as legitimate. What? Do you think Jesus as being transgender is valid, Albie? Do you think he's...
Look, if that is the conclusion that an academic has come up with, I think it's certainly an interesting conclusion to make.
I wonder if he could work out whether Jesus was black or white.
You say it's
about 10
interesting.
seconds.
Yeah, I think it's a shame that we don't burn heretics anymore.
No, he's joking, obviously.
Oh, yes, I am joking, by the way.
Listen, on today's show, I've been asking, should health screening for migrants be mandatory? According to our Twitter poll, it's gone up one more, isn't it? 94% of you say yes, and 6% of you say no. Now, a huge thank you to my panel, former Labour MP Stephen Pound. Stephen, thank you very much. And also political commentator Albie Amankona for joining me today. And a big thank you to you at home for your company. I'll be back at 4 next Saturday on GB News. Don't forget you can check us out on YouTube. Up next is Gloria Di Piano.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking wet in the southeast with some showers across western parts. Let's take a look at the details. Southwestern England will see a mix of clear spells and scattered showers this evening. The showers will be mainly across Devon and Cornwall and could be locally heavy. Skies across the southeast of England will remain cloudy, and we can expect some further rain at times, especially for Kent and Sussex. Wales will see a showery end to Sunday, with winds also remaining brisk along the west coast. Eastern areas, though, will see some lengthy dry spells. Sunday, however, will end on a dry note across the Midlands, with the clearest skies across the north and west. A few mist and fog patches may also form as the evening goes on. Northeastern England will also be largely dry, but further west there will be some showers, some of which may be heavy. It will be breezy along Irish Sea coast, but lighter winds elsewhere. Showers will be quite widespread across Scotland this evening, with the showers heavy in places. The far northeast, though, may avoid most of the showers and stay largely dry. Northern Ireland, though, won't be so lucky, with scattered showers continuing here throughout the evening. Winds will be brisk, especially along the coast and over the hills. Overnight, we'll see further showers in the west of the UK, but drier further east with some mist and fog patches forming. And that's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here?